I've been introduced, I'm Tim James. I'm a senior lecturer in crime scene science at Teeside University. My background is out of operational work rather than the pure academia. So I was operational in Staffordshire Police to start with, and then came up to Durham. So I was based in Cannock, which I'm sure Rachel knows, and then moved my way up north. So what I'm going to be looking at today, mostly linked with our distance learning, but it's something I'm going to definitely incorporate in the future, is looking at using 360 imagery supported by 2D images to support the students' experience at working within crime scenes. And it's been a bit of a journey over this time, and I've had to pare back some of my hopes and wishes and be realistic in relation to what I was going to be looking at and utilising. So the university acquired a far-end scanner, which was a great piece of kit. Unfortunately, it's stored at a different part of the university. It's used mostly for research. You had to book it. There was insurance issues with it. I think it was like £50,000–60,000 piece of equipment. So I was a little bit paranoid for utilising that myself. Using it is fairly complex. We had a 2–3 day training course on that, which was fine. But unless you're using it regularly, you just sort of quickly forget what you're doing and how to do it. And that was a big issue with the frequency. At that stage, we were thinking of actually developing and building these scenes. Also took me quite a time to actually get the scenes recorded, moving the scanner, getting it set up. Even doing a fast sort of processing, it took quite a bit of time as well. And there's a lot of post processing. And that can be really quite significant. So I did a little test with that. It took me, as a beginner, about a day to record all the scans. I was having to repeat quite a few, and I was sort of being a bit nervous and doing ones I probably didn't need. But it was this sort of downstream. It took me sort of 4 days, remembering how to use the software, cleaning up the scans, rendering, stitching. I started doing this at work, and then in the end, the computer there was just too slow, and I had to put all the material onto a hard disk, bring it home, and use my own personal game/work PC, which had a much better processor, memory, etc., to get that to work for me. And without using it regularly, it just didn't work. What I'll do, I'll open up a little video of the scans that I did in relation to this, and it's a lovely piece of software, and it's a lovely thing to be using. You can go through the scene, see what's around there, and we can see some blood on the floor coming up here with footwear marks. So it does give a great deal of information in there, and it has the advantage, it's a proper 3D, you can fly through it. So that's our external area of the campus, Kendra Square. We've got the scene house, which you could see sort of built in the scan coming back in here. So it gives a very, informative view. This isn't rendered at very high resolution because it was taking too much time. And you can see there's lots of artifacts on there which didn't get cleaned up. But it would allow you to fly through it, and it has its purposes, and in court it's a very valuable sort of item. But that was just sort of taking too long and too much time for me to be working with that. So I sort of stepped back from that and decided too time consuming, issues with the licensing software, the technical level was very high, and you need to be using it regularly to keep the competency higher. So then moved on to medium expectations, which was my sort of Matterport. Ricoh Theta V360 cameras, took minutes to record a scene. You could add in additional 2D supporting images. If you go with their camera, 2,800, not cheap, but a lot better than 50–60,000. We already had some Ricoh Theta cameras because we started to do 360 scene recording in our general scene examinations. We had 10 of those already. Image quality is fairly good. You get a walk-through feel, so you feel you are walking through and examining the scene itself. Hosted by Matterport, came a bit of a pricing issue with that. I managed to run up a bill only about 150 quid without really realising it, because I was launching and posting my practice scenes. And it became not particularly viable in relation to it, but it's a reasonably priced sort of aspect with it. You can now get a Ricoh Theta Z1, which is a bit more expensive 4K camera, but the quality of the images and the high dynamic range adjustments and settings you can do on that really increases the quality of your images. So I'm hoping to be able to acquire one of those soon. So good quality images, technical complexity, medium, time taken is medium in relation to that. One of their big promotional points is that, say, it develops what they call their doll's house. So you can see this is my house here in the doll's house view. You can go into VR, so you can rotate it, move it around, look through it, and it's fairly straightforward in some ways to do, but it is a bit more time consuming. You can go to floor plans as well, or have one floor at a time and sort of process that and give you that opportunity. So it is nice, but it takes that bit of time to work through it. So we step in, let's just go back to London, but you move through in this sort of format. You can look around, you can zoom in a little bit. It does allow you to take some basic measurements with that if you want to get those proportions of the scene, which is can be fairly handy, but again, it's not essential in relation to it. Doing it inside here where we've got nice angles and straight lines is good. However, moving outside where I start getting the vegetation, I had to take lots of different little images and try and get them to stitch together. And it stitches externally. You upload it to their server and it tries to put it together. And it wouldn't always do it in relation to the outside sort of scenes. So it does let you walk through it. It is a nice feel. There are some definite pros to this, you know, giving you the doll's house to jump through, etc. But I still found it a little bit cumbersome for what I was hoping to do. Pricing was reasonable, but you did start getting charged for the number. And if you want to have lots of different ones up there available to students, it could start to get quite expensive. But you can also use your iPhone to build up your images rather than having to use a full 360 sort of camera in relation to that. So one active model is free. 5 active models you can have students going to, then you're looking at a monthly various subscription costs. So it's not exorbitant, but it can start to mount up. So what I sort of settled on in the end, which was realistic expectations rather than to the lowest common denominator, is something that I found was fit for my purpose, and was using the Cooler platform and the Ricoh Theta V cameras. So the £350, the platform itself, good quality, 360 in minutes. I can add in additional 2D images, would take a little bit of extra time to do, and generating that tour was sort of 2 to 4 hours depending on the complexity of it. And the pricing per month was fairly reasonable, and we got a number of counts for different members of staff. So what I found it useful for is pre-seminar preparation. You can generate the tour, launch it, and then give the students access to it, and they can have a look around it and raise discussion. They can make notes on it. The first one I did was a little simple health and safety tour to get students thinking about potential risks at an everyday crime scene in a domestic premises. Digital artifacts at a scene, going through that with 360. And then I started adding the 2D images, which I think improved the way I could be flexible and to how I used it in my teaching. So we want to sort of utilize it. If a student was there examining the scene, they can look at the scene, walk around it, decide what exhibits could be expected to be present and recovered, provide them with 2D images of some of the key aspects, expect them to complete a crime scene report form as if they were physically present at the scene, and then from that crime scene report form write a statement, and then hopefully would do a presentation in court where they testify in relation to their actions. Hopefully no one's going to get too much in the way of motion sickness in relation to these, because I'll be bombing around various views. What you can also do with a lot of these is put them in the Google Cardboard or a VR headset, and so you can sort of work your way through. So what I have is a 360 image with my university plaque down there. You put your markers in and then you jump to those particular markers. So the first hazard here is really just the stairs, and then the Hoover and the cable on there. come up to the landing. We've obviously got the ladder as a potential trip hazard, but I'm hoping they would look up and maybe make comment, well, why is the ladder there? It's actually under a loft hatch. Could something actually be hidden in the loft hatch? Could we go up there and find a whole little cannabis cultivation area? The kitchen, simple hazard like a slip hazard, and with that item on the floor. And here we've got a knife. It was in blood there, but it's come out green for some colour anomaly, but sharp blood there. Bleach here as the surface being cleaned. Is a bleach on there. This was quite a common one for me, banging my head on doors and things that were open and sticking out. But even other little things like looking at the iron here, it's plugged in under the counter. Is that on? Is it hot? Could they burn themselves? Is the oven on? The washing right on the end, is that making it unstable? I had a scene where it was a murder inquiry. There was an ironing board with a whole load of washing placed on it, which was in the way of the door. It was a hazard, and that had to be processed and got out of the way so we could get in and out with our equipment and process the scene. So it's quite a straightforward, easy feel to move through the scene and look around. So here we have a cigarette just on the ashtray above the bin, a simple trip hazard with the rug. And then we're thinking of other evidence types, DNA on the bottles, but that potentially is a hazard in of itself as well. So I moved on from that to our digital scene. Let's pop into a couple of the rooms. It's becoming more important nowadays just to be aware of digital evidence, thinking about what's going to be involved. So I've got a version of this which doesn't have any of these image links in here. They just wander around and they're expected to identify it. So I've got pictures on the wall. Could we identify where that picture is? Is that a place where victims, suspects have visited? Just get them thinking a little bit more intelligent side of things. We've got a hard drive, external hard drive here with 4 hard disks in it. And then there's a reader on the desk. So are they associating that reader with the loose hard drives, which are here? Those getting plugged into the reader. Little notepad, pen, the pad there, just about see indented writing. If they look on the side here, we then have a post-it note, which might be a password or things like that. So they can work their way around some historical sort of storage media, which can be important. There could be illegal data on that. They need to be aware, to be thinking, well, just because I can't access it on my equipment, that it may be that you do need to find other equipment to access it. In this one, you can see what I've actually done in the very first image is that I've pinched the Street View image from Google Street View and imported that into my own presentation. So I'm saying this is the house we're pretending that we're at, and then we can go into our scene. We've got our standard 360 and we can look around in that. What I've got in here though as well is the images I've said I've taken as a CSI. So my nameplate at the start of the scene, external shots showing the window here is open, insecure. Same with some of the internal. And there's the contextual for the door handle, and then a closer shot of the red staining on there. So I'm expecting the students to say that they've taken these images and understand the images. The window there, so the fingerprint images aren't perfect. They were just taken on an iPad while I was holding a torch, because that's all I had available at the time in relation to that. And then the footwear marks. So they can use these and build up their own material from that. So this is a crime scene report form that students completed after walking through that scene. The MO, visual description, they've listed the photographs as their exhibits, and they've listed the exhibits they would have expected to have taken. They put a little sketch and diagram in there and completed that crime scene report for them. So even though they weren't physically in attendance at that crime scene, they've been able to, actually wanting to open, they've been able to generate that material. So the last one I'll quickly look at is our vehicle scene. So we can work our way around the vehicle. You can also import or put in audio files. So if you want to give instructions. So it's quite nice being able to have those little audio files put in there as well. So you can give instructions or actual technical information in relation to what they're looking at with the vehicle itself. So telling there to take a closer look. This image here is embedded across the bottom. Put a little bit of information in there. We can jump back out. This image is a linked image. It's not part of the images that are on the bottom, but you can then add information with your images as well. So it allows you to come back out and look at those. If we go into the interior, we can look around. We can see that the seat is laid back. This is linked with a sexual assault. Look at the steering wheel. There is some staining there. It's not particularly clear. So we can now see the red coloration, and then we can hyperlink in there, and this hopefully will open up as a video that I've recorded as part of a demonstration session. So here I am looking at blood swabs. So it reinforces the material that we're looking at within here as well. So we'll come back out and then we'll look towards the front of the windscreen. So here we can see a footwear mark on there. Moving closer and say make a note of orientation. So the toes pointing down, so they're lying on the front. This is the person supposedly climbing on top of our victim. We can link in to our university footwear database, and they can have a search through the database and see if they can find a matching footwear pattern to go with that, and at least get an identification of a make and a type with that as well. And again, we can jump out to a video demonstrating how to recover and powder and lift a footwear mark in relation to that as well. So it gives us a large number of options in relation to how to build on our scene work here, and sort of get them to look at things, think about them, generate it as if they were the ones working with it. So the advantage of putting in links to videos, links to external sources, we can actually link into a library as well. If we want to recommend a library book where they can find additional information, so there's just linking to the Scenes of Crime handbook, and then expect them to go and find a little bit more information in relation to that. And then one final one we'll quickly look at. So we've linked it to some briefing information. So we generate a sway for the students to work through. So talking about temporal analysis, there's our location, crime pattern theory. We had 2 handprints on the back, and this hopefully links into the information here, the lone male seen pushing away. So they should be able to pick that up and that association with that. So you can put the links into other teaching support material. I've also put in links there which I won't jump to in relation to a little instruction video and the tour that I generated with that. So that's just showing you how we use this, or how I've used it with some of my colleagues to work through the scenes and develop that sort of aspects Okay, that's me finished. Thank you very much.
That was absolutely brilliant, Tim. Thank you for that amazing presentation and giving us an idea of how you've used it in your teaching. We've got a few questions here. I just wanted to know, what feedback have you had from your students regarding the material you've created recently?
The students are fairly pleased with it in relation. They see it as a good compromise in the current situation that we've had. And some of them have quite liked the fact that they can have the walkthrough with less information. We can have the discussion. Then there's a second walkthrough, which then has images or additional information, which then will reinforce the conversations we've had about it. They've found it easy to navigate and understand, and they've grasped it fairly quickly.
Oh, that's brilliant. I like the fact that you build up the information and it's like a staged approach. I think it's brilliant, the approach you've taken. I was going to ask, how do you host the software? Is it attached to your Blackboard system, or do you send a link out for the resources to students?
Yeah, it is actually a link itself. So these are the links to the hosts, and Cooler is the host site. So they actually host the tours themselves. So I'm going to. So can you see all the various tours on here at the moment?
Yes, we can. Yeah.
So
oh, they're amazing.
These are the tours that I've generated. So this is the Cooler site. So I then will generate a tour and pop that onto there. So that was the crime CSE burglary dwelling, which they did their statement and crime scene report form. That's the vehicle one there.
Yeah.
You know, and then I've just got some little tours of the university. So that's where that gets hosted. So it's externally hosted. You can obviously do a video. So the little videos I showed at the beginning, they were recorded on Blackboard through Panopto. So you could record your own walkthrough, and then you've got that hosted as part of your own sort of system. But I can have as many on here as I want. So I've not got too many yet, but they will keep building up on them. But there's been no issues with Cooler. Everyone's been able to get access. It works well. The options for editing and bits and pieces are fairly straightforward. You can put the images in, you can put external links in, you can put your sound files in, so you can start talking about things. So how you want to build up your layers of educational information, it can be quite plain. They walk through it, then you add the layers after the fact, so you're not giving them everything immediately.
I think that's brilliant, because then you can't be influencing them with bias in a way. So I think it's really innovative what you've done there. Talking about the sound bites and the links that you add in and the little prompts for people to click on, is that quite easy to do in the Cooler software? Is it quite straightforward to add the?
Yeah, it's a doddle really. So if I click on the edit here, you just insert from your choices here, play sound. As long as you've got it saved in the correct file format, it's fine. And all you need to do, if I wanted to drag a link in here, I just drag from the images below. If I save that, that will jump to that image now. So once you've imported your images, you just drag and drop for your route around sort of thing. And it's very easy. They've also got, so you add your hotspot. So that will add it, your hotspot here. You can change the image. So you've got your own assets, built-in ones. So you've got information, you've got your music, you've got your sound, drone nowadays, camera and bits and pieces. So you can put that in, or you can put your own. So that's, you know, up to you in relation to what you want to do with that. So one of my own assets is obviously my plaque. So I generated that to go over the tripod. So you can see the tripod is there. So I just make that a master, on there. I'll get it back into roughly the right place. I'll worry about that later. You make that a master on there, and then it should appear in the right place, covering your tripod settings. Ooh, lost it now. Tripod settings and the other one. So it is very user friendly and easy to play with, and that's one of the advantages of it as well. Once you get an idea of it, it's pretty simple to actually do with that, and they do feel like they're examining it.
Oh, it's really immersive. I mean, looking at the footage there, I can imagine, you know, for the students, and you've generated a lot of interest in the chat. So I'm just going to read out some of the comments, Tim. Looks really good and an impressive amount of work, and I have to agree with that. It is absolutely amazing. One of the questions is, how does this fit into assessment? What are students assessed on using these resources?
So with this one, I obviously had them do the crime scene report form.
And that was really good to see that example of how the students have used that and how they added their that detail to that document. I thought that was really nice for us to see as well.
Get it to come up again. But so, you know, they then felt equipped enough to generate the crime scene report form, you know, rather than just giving them still images. So, you know, they have filled it out nicely with the MO, the visual description. And I say with that one, I put the images in for them to say they were their own, but they've listed the general scene photographs, taken the swabs, you know, continued with the photography, taken some more and used more of my images. And then there's sort of, you know, the fingerprint lift, the footwear sketches they've done and then pasted in. You know, and at the end, you know, they do get to do those little bits with it. I don't know why that's not opening for me. I'll sort that out another time. But so yeah, they then actually went to court with them. So they did a testimony over Blackboard Collaborate. And so they had to talk about what they did at the scene, what they recovered, how they recovered it, why they recovered it. So that's what I got to assess. So nothing practical as in a physical product, but the processing in a practical sense, virtually, I could then assess all the way through. So basically crime scene to court still.
Yeah, so they had to justify the decision. That follows on actually quite nicely. There's another question. Do students show the decision making by completing the report, thinking about cognitive bias? So I presume that's what part of the court assessment was looking at, the justification of what they would do at the scene and such like.
Yeah, so I've done them in two ways. I've had a scene where I've not put photographs, and I said what you do is use your own common sense from the scenario to assume that if you wanted to examine an area, you could get a positive result. So if the window was a point of entry, it was open and secure, then without me putting any images in, I would expect them to say, yes, I've got a fingerprint lift from the window. If there was a cigarette butt at the scene, which the householder said wasn't theirs, I would expect them to have recovered that, even if I didn't have a separate photograph of it. So you can do it again at different levels of complexity and how much you spoon feed them. So you can build up that thought process.
And there's a couple more, Tim. We're not going to let you go yet. So are there any scenes, what a fun system to use. Are there any scenes that you haven't created yet that you plan to do so in the future?
Yeah, we're just working through some basic ones at the moment. We've got a drug-assisted rape scenario running through with a series of linked scenes. That's where the vehicle's from. We've then got coming up an interior scene linked with that, and then later on there's a firearms discharge scene with that. So we're building up the series of those. We also obviously want to do a hanging scene and some suspicious deaths, and the students have used the 360 camera to capture the scenes where they've had their bodies and things outside and sort of doing that for the briefing. So we use this 360 camera for briefings at major scenes as well. So you can record really quite quickly, go in, do the initial walkthrough as the crime scene manager. Photographer takes a quick series of 360s, bring them out, do the briefing, and using them as a briefing tool as well. You don't generate the tour, you just look at the individual images in that briefing. But that's worked really quite well for me as well.
That's brilliant. I think you've inspired lots of people. With in the chat, people are talking about creating laboratory resources, and there's even a comment from Sammy. This is fab. I'm going to take this idea to our finance team. Thank you. So
It's
brilliant present.